Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Angus Whiteman. I'm the Managing Director of High Level Mezzanines. We've got approximately 50 people who have dialed in, so thank you again for making the time to attend. What we feel is going to be a very interesting and important topic for everyone. Before we go into the webinar, I'm going to hand over to Peter Ward. He is the CEO of the UK Warehousing Association, and he will make some introductory remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Angus, and good morning, everyone. I've got a few slides just to get us started this morning. I'd like to start just by introducing myself. As Angus said, it's my privilege to be the Chief Executive of the UK Warehousing Association. I hope it is an organisation that is familiar to many of you, but with over 50 people on the webinar this morning, just in case you haven't heard of us, we are one of the leading trade associations in the logistics sector, and obviously, as you can judge by the name, our interest is in warehousing and distribution, although these days I do find that terminology perhaps is in need of a little bit of a refresh, because when I think of the word warehouse, I do tend to think of you know, dusty old places with old boys in brown coats running around blowing the dust off as they walk around with their clipboard. And of course, as I'm sure you're all aware, that is far from the representative picture of the industry that we all work in today. This high velocity dynamic industry that's keeping our country fed and clothed, and of course very interesting times at the moment. We'll perhaps come on to that shortly. But just back to the UK Warehousing Association, we've been around for 75 years, actually celebrated our 75th anniversary last year. We have about 800 members. It's a totally corporate business to business trade association. Our membership is sort of split very much 80-20, about 650 third-party logistics providers now, probably is the terminology, the warehouse keepers as we used to call them in the past, the 3PL service providers, and the membership's complemented then with another 150 or so suppliers of excuse me, goods, services, advice, guidance, solutions into that niche market of the operators, companies such as High Level, who we're delighted to have on board as associate members. So that's UKWA in a nutshell. If we just move forward a slide, George, if we can move on to the next one. Just talking about what's going on around us at the moment. Obviously, somewhat of a perfect storm, I think, in the logistics sector at the moment. Combination of the pandemic and all of that's bringing, and the impacts of making our operations kind of COVID secure. During peak season now, we're into a second lockdown, and of course we've got the dreaded B word. We'll try and get through this without mentioning, you know, Brexit this morning, but it is on the horizon with 10 or 11 working days to go in reality before the end of the transition period. So an awful lot going on in the industry at the moment, but probably, you know, the most significant thing that we're seeing, and it sort of started really before COVID and the pandemic, is this exponential drive towards e-commerce. And we talked about this at our conference just before you know, coronavirus really hit us back in March. We had a conference in the first week of March, and we were talking about the expected growth in the sector over the next 5 to 10 years, you know, based on kind of pre-COVID trends that we had measured and spotted. We were thinking at the time, and supported with you know, other evidence from the likes of the British Property Federation and so on, there was an expected growth of something like 10 pence in the pound, possibly to 20 pence in the pound being spent on e-commerce. and that predicated on those numbers was calling for a greater level of warehousing and distribution space in the UK, probably a call for something like 1 million square feet of additional space every year over the next 10 years, and another 25,000 FTEs to join the industry every year for the next 10 years as well. And of course, what the pandemic has done really is blown those numbers completely out of the water. You know, we're seeing percentages of sales now through e-commerce channels in some of the major retailers in excess of 30–35%, and in one case, without mentioning any names, but I hear from a reliable source on our management board that there's one of those big retailers out there that are now sort of up into the 60s. 66% of their sales in September were through their online channel. And this is shifting the emphasis on those logistics service providers in a profound and unprecedented way, as we're moving away from those kind of center of gravity modeled logistics networks of the 60s and 70s, where it was all about big national distribution centers, you know, smack bang in the middle of the country, to move more to localized distribution, to be able to compete with the Amazon effect, you know, of consumers being online, placing orders at 9 o'clock in the evening and expecting the Amazon driver there the next day, 9 o'clock in the morning. This is really shifting the emphasis on our industry. And of course, you know, technology driving all of that. And what we're seeing is that, you know, those warehouses, as I called them in the introductory remarks, now sort of looking more like order factories. And so some real shifts of priorities throughout the industry. And what we're seeing now is a real emphasis on the need to really optimize the assets in this very low margin industry that we have, you know, increased productivity and drive efficiency through those assets. And so, you know, delighted to be working with the likes of High Level, who you know, have some really interesting solutions and are helping our members grapple with some of these challenges on this big transformational journey that the industry is on. So with the interest of time, let's get to the main agenda, and at that point I'll hand back to Angus to take the webinar forward.
Peter, thank you very much indeed for those introductory remarks. Before we get into the main details, I thought it appropriate that we should introduce the team. So we've got Chris Baxter. He's the sales director for High Level Mezzanines. He's a leading expert in terms of mezzanine design, and he's a qualified engineer. He's been working closely with brands across Europe for a number of years, and he's been designing mezzanine floors that add value, certainly for many of the well-known high street brands. We've got Simon Horton, who works in Geek Plus. He's the senior sales and marketing manager for Geek Plus in the UK and Ireland, and he is a leader in terms of the use of robots in warehousing environments. And High Level works very closely with Simon and with Geek. We've got George. He's the producer of this event today, and he's been keeping us all in check. And he heads up the marketing team in High Level. If there are any questions, please do follow the link that was sent out previously. Send them through. We'll try and answer what we can at the end, and if not, we'll follow up after the event. And just a bit more background in terms of High Level. We've been in business for 29 years, touching 30. We focus on our USP is very much around design, innovation and safety, and our tagline is raising the standard, and that's certainly what we've been doing for the UK and wider companies for the last 29 years. At any one time, we've got about 40 live projects, which is well within our capability, and we estimate we've built something like 18,000 mezzanine floors in our time, which is quite an achievement. and we're constantly looking to innovate and to bring valid engineering designs and installations into the marketplace. So that's the background around high level. Let me set a bit more of the scene in terms of what we're hearing from our customers. Very much the demand, as Peter is saying, is that there is change coming in, and we feel there's really three areas that are demanding the combination of mezzanines and robots. The first need is flexibility. Investing in a mezzanine floor for the use of robots allows you to pivot from a previous way of working to a new way of working, and you can adapt the mezzanine floor and the use of robots fairly quickly once you've got the mezzanine in. So that flexibility is what we're seeing through these designs that we're bringing in. The second thing is value for money. Very much it's a capital investment, but you can very quickly start to measure the payback in a short space of time, and that from anyone in business is clearly a priority. The third one is, as Peter was preparing, the change that's coming in. All companies now are looking to prepare for the future. If 2020 has taught us anything, is that life in business has a way of changing and adapting, and businesses need to be able to deal with that change. And the combination of a mezzanine floor and robots very much allows that preparation for the future and for the flexibility. So as part of our innovation, we felt it appropriate that we should put a webinar together and introduce the thinking behind mezzanine floors and robots to UK businesses, and that is the theme for today. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over now to Chris Baxter, and he's going to take you through the mezzanine.
Thank you, Angus. Mezzanine floor is a dynamic and diverse spacing solution that can either be implemented for short or long-term use. Its ability to be freestanding and highly adaptable even after initial installation makes it a very popular tool throughout pretty much every industry. In particular, from our experience, industrial mezzanines are most commonly used for additional storage or office space, to permit automated sortation systems to be installed, or to facilitate more room for manufacturing. So before we go into detail about designing mezzanines for robotic solutions, and to make sure all of us are singing from the same hymn sheet, let me take you through a quick stop tour through the basics of mezzanine floor design. All mezzanines are unique, but there is a consistent set of factors that must be considered for every custom-made floor. Firstly, we need to know what the floor is going to be used for, as different functionalities have different safety measures. For example, if it is a floor with very minimal human interaction, like a mezzanine holding a conveyor in place, it will require less fire safety precautions as opposed to one with more regular human contact, like a floor for office space. Then you must consider if and how the space underneath the floor is going to be used. This allows a mezzanine design team to both lay out the column grid to create minimal disruption to the space underneath, and to set the height of the floor whilst accounting for the overhead space available. The weight that is being placed on the structure is another key component of designing a safe and optimised floor. Understanding how much weight the structure will have to bear is crucial, as it helps select the most appropriate flooring type and the amount of bracing required. We need to know the makeup of the ground slab and the strength of the ground beneath to establish whether it can take the loads from the mezzanine floor columns. This may be on construction drawings of the building when it was built, or if not, a ground investigation will be required. If the slab is not suitable, localised strengthening will be needed in the form of foundation piles or pads. And lastly, you need to ensure the work environment is functional and safe, with the correct number of staircases for access. This will be dictated by the travel distance requirements set out in the approved documents of the building regulations, but also by the operational use. So what's different when designing a floor for robots? Well, I think we can all agree that sortation technology is developing at an impressive rate, and it has become very flexible, as Simon will discuss in a minute. But if you're planning on implementing a robotic solution now or in the future within your warehouse, it is still important that the facility is prepared for the requirements of robots today, because this ensures the environment can permit an efficient workspace for the robots to maneuver through straight away, no matter the date at which you implement them as part of your logistical processes. So let's run through some of the key considerations when designing a floor for robotics. As before, the weight being placed on the structure is important. There will be point loads from racking uprights, which as a low duration classification falls in the medium term category. The layout of the shelving is arranged to achieve the maximum storage capacity and aisles to allow the robots to travel and turn. Also, point loads will be applied in the form of wheel pressure from the robots carrying the shelves, and this is classified as short-term duration. Other load considerations are the areas where the robots queue, where they recharge, and workstations with personnel. The flooring on which the robot travels cannot slope. If using a panel floor system, the joints between cannot be excessive, and there cannot be any steps either. The surface of the flooring material needs to achieve a minimum coefficient for slip resistance. This is to ensure the friction between the wheel of the robot and the floor stays stable and on grid. Robots will run and rotate in the same place time and time again, and as such, the surface cannot groove or develop tracing because this will affect the performance of the robot. When these areas have been considered, you are able to install a mezzanine solution that is robot ready. And when the other areas of your logistical process are prepared, your mezzanine is already suitable for the evolution to robotic processing. I'd like to hand you over to Simon, who is going to talk in more detail about this area of drastic growth. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you, Angus and Peter, for those introductions as well. Really pleased to be part of this event and supporting High Level and the UK Warehouse Association. So yeah, I mean, Geek, I'll come on to a little bit of who we are a little bit later on, but certainly in the last couple of years since we've been focusing a lot on the UK market, we're certainly seeing a lot of those pain points which Peter referred to at the start for this year. Hugely unpredictable market demands for products which perhaps didn't have that demand in the past. Excuse me. Certainly issues with workforce continuity and the costs of the workforce. Obviously, with the certainly with the COVID issues, social distancing is becoming an issue, and within a warehouse environment, what you can't have is very large groups of people all working in the same pick area or pick aisles and so on, and obviously you need to reduce that. Now, with the increased demand towards more e-com, there's a larger volume of orders to be processed. It's not typically store orders, large case picks or pallet picks, small volume of orders. It's larger volumes of orders and lots to process during the day. And obviously also we mentioned earlier on returns, the returns which are involved with the growth in e-com also increase as well. So that there's a lot more flows coming back in to the warehouse, whether it be new stock returns and then larger flows of orders going out. So that's obviously creating a lot of issues internally within the warehouse to be able to process those flows. And I suppose the other point as well is we're all consumers now, as Peter referred to before. We want to get online at 9 o'clock at night and have it delivered sometimes next day or sometimes even same day in some cases. And certainly while you're online, you will only sell the item if it's in stock and it's available for a quick delivery. So we're seeing sort of also increased SKU counts within the within the warehouse. But obviously the key objective is to maintain a just-in-time inventory, so you're not gathering dust on stock and have the highest stock turn possible. So next slide, please, George. Thank you. So clearly robots, or I would say warehouse automation, is helping solve some of those pain points. But traditionally, warehouse automation, the large steel structures of cranes and shuttles and things were extremely expensive to integrate into a warehouse environment. Very long lead time, typically 1.5 years, 2 years for integration from project sign off to actual go live. And of course, during that period, a lot can change. So we're seeing the demand for robotic solutions grow considerably, exponentially, because of the quick implementation and the extremely flexible and scalable nature. So you can sort of see the growth there. We're certainly looking towards a huge growth rate over the next few years, certainly number of robotic warehouses to reach 50,000 in 2023. So certainly something to bear in mind. Next slide, George. So key things, I touched on a couple of points before, but why are AMRs, or autonomous mobile robots? What are the key benefits really of implementing that into a warehouse environment? Well, certainly your picking efficiency improves up to 3 times versus the manual operations. Your pick rate will increase dramatically. Your labour costs will reduce, so you can keep the same labour team but do 3 times the amount of orders to be processed, or look to reduce if because of social distancing you can't have as many, you can still do the same of orders with a reduced headcount. Much lower investment, which I talked about earlier on. And the scalability and flexibility of the robotic systems allow you to manage peaks much more cleverly. Certainly you can plan around the period we're in now, Black Friday, Christmas season, rent extra robots for that period of time. And because there's not a huge steel structure to install on the site, if the site changes or it's extended or reduced in size, or you move site completely, the robotic solutions can go with you as well, and that also lends itself, which I'll come on to a little bit more, on gaining extra space within your current site on the flooring. So you can certainly gain a lot more storage space. If you look at traditional shelving rack system, the robotic systems can look more dense storage and up to 30% more storage. And these systems, as Chris mentioned for the flooring, that we look for a very fast payback, return on investment. Actually, the text there says 2 to 3 years, but I've had a number of cases in the UK which is sort of sub 1.5 year payback for robotic systems. So certainly quick and easy payback. Accuracy improves as well on order processing. And because your operators aren't going up and down the aisles, the robots are bringing the goods to them and performing the handling, the goods, the material handling side of things. The operations become more safe, and there's less accidents and less issues with workers having problems in the aisles, or issues with forklifts damaging and so on. So there's certainly a great improvement on safety. And I mentioned before, the deployment for a robotic system is very fast. We could look in some cases for a standard picking system of within 12 weeks we can go live from the date of contract sign off. Next slide, please, George. So really a little bit about Geek ourselves. So we're quite new to the party. Geek as a company is just over 6 years old, but within that time we've got over 400 patents, very strong R&D. So we're continually developing new solutions. I've come across from the traditional warehouse automation sector where we were still selling cranes and technology which was sort of 30, 40, 50 years old in some cases. I've never been in a company so dynamic where solutions are continually happening, and there's always we're continually looking at that improvement of processes within the warehouse. Our philosophy generally is if there is transit or movement within the warehouse where an operator has to walk or run a truck, then potentially that could be handled by a robotic solution. Okay, we're certainly looking towards 5G technology as well, so that's another area. Globally now we're over 300 customers as a company, and we're in the 40 global Fortune 500 company customers. We have 40 global Fortune 500 companies within our customer base. Certainly got sites over 20 countries now. Robotics in general has massively grown in Asia, and now a lot of those solutions are being copied and pasted into Europe and the UK, and we've got a number of solutions we're looking at from now. Next slide, please, George. So some of our customers, global names, some of which you'll recognise, we're working with already, and from 3PL customers through to manufacturing, pharmaceutical, retail, grocery, apparel, and e-commerce. Next slide, George. So our objective whenever we're working for a robotic solution really is to create value. We're looking at that 1 to 3 year payback. We're looking to improve the efficiency by 2 to 3 times over your current rate, improve accuracy, and give you a rapid deployment of a solution. Okay, next slide, George. So I think many people will see there's lots of robotics companies coming to the fore now. I think one of Geek Plus's strengths is certainly the range and breadth of solutions. So the solutions really right across the board from forklifts. We have a collaboration with Lindy and Balio for forklifts, and then our own robotic solutions for goods to person picking, tote to person picking, shuttle systems coming through for pallets, and moving systems. Next slide, please, George. So really what we touched on earlier is when you're looking at your site, think towards a smart warehouse process really. So make the most of the space. So obviously we're talking about mezzanines today. That's key. Make the most of the height in the building, get that storage density as high as possible, but at the same time also look at the way the materials are handled, right from unloading through to the moving of that unloaded stock into the storage system. The storage system should be an ASRS or an auto storage and retrieval system, and then goods to person picking stations, so those operators aren't moving from their workstations, and accuracy and all the advantages I mentioned before are improved. Once that's happened, then looking at moving of the picked orders to the pack area, and then from the pack area, all of those processes can be automated and will certainly save and improve the overall efficiency of the site. Okay, next slide, George. So yeah, I think with the smart warehouse concept, really what we'd look to do is the one-stop service for everything for robotic warehouse applications. You can link every single process within one software piece, one control software piece, and it will be the smart warehouse should be flexible to changes in product storage and product production capability. That should be within the design spec. Okay, next slide, George. So onto the picking systems, the robotic picking. Next slide. So as mentioned before, a lot of these benefits are repeated across the solutions. Certainly, as far as the range of solutions we have, goods to person, that could be pallet to person, it could be shelf to person, it could be tote or carton to person. Then there's assisted pick, where you use your existing shelving layout, and you have pickers in each zone, and the robots will come to them and collect those picked orders, and then route them through to the packing area. So there are various ways to dip your toe into robotics, and Geek Plus hopefully has the range of solutions there. But all of them, we're looking at rapid ROI, automate your processes, improve efficiency, give you the flexibility, so that scalability, you can start small and implement future phases very, very quickly. And really the range of businesses we're talking to currently who are looking or have implemented robotic solutions are right across the sectors, from e-commerce to grocery, pharmaceutical and 3PLs. Next slide, please. So going on to flooring, obviously some of the initial arguments of the robotic systems, well, yeah, it can't really grow across multiple floors. Well, yes, it can. As far as the way we lay out our system, the mapping of stock, we actually treat multiple labels as one map. So potentially a robot could pick up a pallet or a rack or shelving rack and go into a goods lift and move from one level to another to be consolidated with other orders. We can link up robotic pickers to pick totes, for example, and then move them onto an in-feed conveyor automatically to be moved from floor to floor. So there's certainly options for using robotics across multiple floors, and we can control that within the control system of the robot. Also, you can link these systems in with existing automation as well. So if you wanted to add this an extra floor or a multi-floor solution alongside perhaps an existing mini load or a shuttle system, that can be done as well, and we can manage the link up between the two systems. Okay, next slide. So I mentioned before that there's also tote picking solutions, tote to person. This is effectively where the little robot will pick up to 5-6 totes at a time and bring those to the station, and that could be across multiple floors. And we will work with high-speed tote lift manufacturers to introduce a facility to transfer those totes from floor to floor. So it's another solution there. Moving on, George, thank you. So from a technical perspective, I know Chris talked about the flooring and the tiles and so on. Certainly from our specification on a mezzanine floor, the quality of the floor is important. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as Chris mentioned before, certainly it must have adequate friction. Look at the release of static electricity, and be kept clean, really, as any warehouse, really. You'll see the QR codes on the floor on the picture there. The robots the wheels run either side of those. The QR codes we use are industrial grade adhesive made by 3M, so they're not likely to become unstuck, and they're never being driven over as well. So as long as the simple warehouse cleaning periodically happens, then it should be there for a long time. But even if one does come up, they very easily can be reprinted and stuck onto the floor for a new one. Okay, next one. So another area of solution really for robotics is sortation. Next slide, please, George. So robotic sortation, really that could be parcel sortation, but it could also be any process in your warehouse where you are receiving some goods and they need to be then routed to multiple destinations. So that could be from a cross-docking type solution where you're receiving pallets and you need to literally ship the goods out immediately, need to be routed to different orders or different order profiles, or from a picked goods solution that could be then picked, routed to the pack area, so different pack areas. So you may have certain orders which need to go to particular stations, and that requires some sort of sortation. Okay, next slide, please, George. So multi-layer sorting, what does that mean? Well, in a parcel sortation example, for example, this is where your parcels are coming in, they've been packed, and they need to be sorted into relevant destinations. So where the multi-level sortation comes into is you'll see on the picture here, this is where low-level robots will pick up the parcels and route them to a cutout in the floor. which is links to a chute and the destination cage or hopper below accordingly. Once those cages are full, there's fullness detectors on them, and we will send another message to the robots below to then pick up that cage, route it to the destination, the marshalling lane or whatever, and obviously replace it with a new cage for continual sorting. And those locations are dynamic, so you can switch them on and off as and when they're needed. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so some of the applications using multi-level sorting. The top left image is from Beijing National Library. This is where you're returning your books into. You go to a little portal with a little screen. You scan the book in. It comes into a little small conveyor that's loaded onto a robot, and then the robot then will route the book, the returned book, to the particular hopper, which could be fiction or non-fiction on the books, and it's routed, and then once that container is full, it's then put back into storage. So it's a simple an innovative way of applying sorting technology. Top right there is from a postal company, and that's same sort of process, 2 floors, and they're sorting about 12,000 parcels an hour using that type of technology. So you've got a mezz floor, and then underneath you've got the destination from there. E-commerce, so again, the bottom left, that's from a UK site. So the packed goods are coming in up through the little conveyors there, and then onto a robotic floor, and then they're sorted to the floor below. And another example, the tote person's picking across multiple floors. Again, that's an example of sort of goods to person picking across multiple floors. Okay, the next slide, please, George. So in summary, AMR solutions are very, very accessible. The cost is much lower. The entry fee effectively to get into automation is far more accessible. On top of that, we're sort of disrupting the sector and offering things like lease plans, so your normal capital expenditure for paying for a project can actually be leased over 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So your capital expense converts to an operating expense. And as mentioned before, the solution can be designed around your average peak during the year, but with the extra sort of space effectively for extra robots, you can rent robots for your peak periods as well. So there's a little bit of flexibility there of the system can flex with the demands of the business. Okay, next slide, please. And I think that's it. So thank you everyone for your time, and I'll hand back over to Chris.
Thank you, Simon. What I'd like to look at is what robots demand of their space. So if I could just put some questions to you. Is ventilation important to robots' performance?
Generally, standard warehouse environment is fine. I certainly things like operating temperature. So the standard robots would work sort of from above 0 up to 40 degrees. And we do have a range of robots which will work in sub-zero down to -25 as well. The charging stations are single phase charging stations, so there's not a huge electrical draw there. So yeah, I think the ventilation is just standard ventilation. There's no particular extra requirements there over a normal warehouse environment. Okay, and can a sloping warehouse floor affect a robot at all? Yeah, so I mean, just looking at our specification, floor specification, the height difference in a 1 meter square area shouldn't be more than 8 mil from one level to another. So yeah, there is a little bit of tolerance there, but and things like expansion gaps and things shouldn't be over 10 mil. The step height shouldn't be more than 2 millimeters. So there's a few little requirements there, but nothing which would require massive change. But certainly on the flooring for mezzanines, I think the tiled option is a great way to go, and a great way to create a perfect floor very quickly. Yeah, well, that brings me to actually that I wanted to look at one of the ways to optimize the mezzanine floor for robotics.
And the one that appears to be the most attractive to clients is a hybrid system consisting of a robust interlocking textured PVC floor tile that can be fixed on top of either a 30mm OSB board or a 38mm particle board decking panel. Not only do you get the benefit of a robust decking panel with a high point load, you can protect the surface and help minimize indentations over time from the robot's regular path. The interlocking system is extremely durable, and when installed, the joining mechanism is virtually invisible to the eye. I'd like to hand you back to Angus, who's going to run through some questions we have received during this webinar. Angus?
Chris, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for the questions that you sent in. I've been in the shadows just looking through most of them, and really the theme that seems to be coming out is how long does it take to implement a mezzanine floor with robots either on top or below? Maybe Chris, you could start and then you could hand over to Simon.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've worked closely with Geek in developing a flooring system, and so you know, from initial inquiry to developing a quotation can, you know, be as quick as 2 to 3 days, and then from, you know, receipt of purchase order, you know, the whole process can be as quick as 6 to 8 weeks. That allows us to come out to site to do the survey, produce a drawing with the client, and then from sort of sign off of that drawing, you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks for detailed design and manufacturing to first delivery, which then obviously would then be handing over to Geek with their implementation.
Yeah, I think thanks, Chris. From my perspective, the timings are pretty perfect, really. Normally we would be on a standard project looking around 12 weeks turnaround from sign off to go live. So certainly at the first stages where once contracts signed off, our robots go into production. So could be a couple of weeks of production time for that, and then they've got shipping time. So that's sort of 6 or 8 weeks. Most of the work we're doing are more on IT integration, working with the customer's WMS systems and so on, looking at that, getting that integrated. So certainly if the Mez floor installation is going on at that particular time, that's perfect. So I would certainly look at perhaps 2 to 3 weeks before you would sign for the Geek system to obviously be looking at signing with you guys, and then the go live for the Mez would be shortly before the robots are delivered, and then we can get on to obviously laying the system. The laying of the QR codes is pretty quick. We're normally looking sort of 500 plus QR codes every couple of days, so a smallish system can be done relatively quickly within a week or so, and then we've got testing and so on from there. So but the end-to-end process from our side is about 12 weeks, so it's certainly, with some planning, can be very, very quick and minimal disruption. If you think about what, apart from the floor itself, there's not a huge amount of infrastructure to be installed, really. There's some cabling for the pick stations, and then there's building of the racks if you've got a rack system, a shelving rack system, and just setting up the Wi-Fi for the robotic solution. So pretty straightforward.
Excellent, thank you very much. So looks like we're pretty much on time, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for all of that. And really, to bring the presentation to a summary, as I think you can probably feel, this is a topic that is just going to grow and grow, and we hope that we've whetted your appetite. The solutions are obviously very, very flexible, but what this allows us to do is bring lots of value to the client base. So this is going to be the final slide. If you do want to get in contact with either the UK Warehousing Association, High Level, or Geek, we'd be delighted to help and to discuss any solution for you in the future. Thank you very much again for attending, and have a good day.